My name is Sheila Corona. Welcome to Sassy Seer Sheila and New Light Streaming Love, as this will be seen on both channels. This is Meta Key 4, The Ghost Signal by Jason Gray. / divine underscore echo colon reroute open bracket source colon silence dash preceding dash sound close bracket. The original transmission date on this writing was 6/8/2025. As with all of the other ones, there is a lot of code, binary, symbolic, transmission coordinates, all of that. And I highly suggest and recommend that you take a look at the writing itself, and you can use the link in the show more section, the description of the video directly beneath this video. There comes a point beyond force, beyond command, beyond symbolic mastery, beyond the architecture of direct will, where the field no longer changes because you push upon it. It changes because you are there, not because you did something dramatic, not because you spoke a decree, not because you altered the visible machinery with visible motion, but because your presence, fully aligned, enters the environment like a frequency the environment cannot ignore. That is where Meta Key 4 opens. Pardon me. Not at the level of action, but the level beneath action. Not at the level of sound, but at the level that gives sound its right to exist. Not at the level of visible instruction, but at the level of silent causation. This is the ghost signal, a transmission so subtle the surface mind almost misses it. A rerouting so complete the old model of causality cannot explain it. A moment of reality by means so quiet, they appear like a movement, not moment, a movement of reality by means so quiet, they appear like nothing at all to those still addicted to spectacle. The field knows. The room knows. The nervous systems inside it know. The symbolic weather knows. The patterning engine knows. And the simulation, which always believed change had to arrive through force, event, argument, collapse, conflict, or willful intervention, suddenly encounters something it has far less defense against. A being whose coherence alters the probabilities of what can continue simply by remaining present. That is the ghost signal. Not absence, not passivity, not withdrawal, invisible authority. The failure of action as final power. Before this key, power still looked like movement, decision, refusal, speech, interruption, boundary, creation, rewriting. All of these were necessary. They remain sacred, but they are not final, because all action still belongs to a visible layer of causation. The world sees an action and says, quote, that caused that. A word was spoken, a choice was made, a line was drawn, a structure shifted, a person left, a work was created. The mind loves this level because it can narrate it. It can assign sequence. It can point. It can say, quote, there. That is where the change began, end quote. But there is a level beneath action where the change was already underway before any visible motion occurred. The room had shifted before the sentence was spoken. The pattern had begun dissolving before the refusal was voiced. The emotional economy had weakened before anyone knew why. The future path had already bent before the first step was taken. Why? Because the deepest rerouting of reality does not begin with action. It begins with presence. Action merely reveals what presence already initiated. That is the threshold meta key 4 opens. I know this to be true. I wouldn't have possibly put it in these sorts of terms in my past. But this is also something that I say what I mean when I say how your field affects everyone around it. It's a matter of presence in the vessel. And now I'm being shown that that has to do with alignment. So much so. And I didn't quite understand that in the past as well as I do now. The line / divine _ echo : reroute open bracket source / silence preceding sound close bracket. Silence preceding sound is not the absence of noise. It is the unstruck field, the causal quiet from which all expression emerges, the pre-vibrational intelligence before waveform, the sacred stillness before intention becomes language, motion, symbol, or event. Most beings do not live from this layer. They live from downstream, from reaction, from interpretation, from the aftershock of environments already shaping them. But the being who has passed through enough fire, enough recursion, enough remembrance, enough collapse of false authority, enough integration of will, enough symbolic directness, enough center occupation, read that alignment, enough truth to become internally unfractured, can begin to source from a quieter level. That layer is not dramatic. It does not announce itself. It does not need to. Boy, I couldn't agree more with that because I've noticed some things about myself over the past, I don't know, about 2 years that I would not have noticed had some of the things that I've moved through and aligned within myself hadn't happened. Everything downstream will eventually show its effects. That is why it is called divine echo. Not because it repeats what was spoken, but it moves from the place before speech and causes the world to answer. What a ghost signal actually is. A ghost signal is a transmission that registers in the field before the surface mind can identify the source. It is felt before it is explained. It alters conditions before it is named. It creates adjustment without overt instruction. It is like walking into a room and the air reorganizes, like a conversation changing tone before anyone consciously decides to speak differently, like a conflict losing heat because one presence no longer offers friction for the distortion to feed on, like a path opening, not because it was forced, but because the field no longer supports the old obstruction in the same way. Oh my God. Oh, wow. You see, I've been saying for years now that the kind of energy that we have witnessed on this planet is no longer supported. The gotta get mine, uh, everything you gotta do to get ahead in the rat race, all those kinds of energies, the lying and hiding things and, making things rough for everybody, that kind of energy is no longer supported. And I've said that for a very long time. And that's what this is actually saying here. Like a path opening, not because it was forced, because that's just more a pushback, but because the field no longer supports the old obstruction in the same way. Like people remembering themselves around you without knowing why. Like patterns ceasing to complete because the deeper signal they depended upon has been rerouted. This is not psychological suggestion, not charisma, not manipulation. It is resonance-based causality operating beneath visible performance. The signal is, quote, ghost, only to those who cannot track reality below the level of event. To the field, it is neither ghost nor mystery. It is instruction. Silence preceding sound. This phrase must be entered carefully. There is ordinary silence, the silence of no one speaking, the silence of pauses, the silence of rest. And then there is deeper silence, the deeper silence, the one that is not merely quiet but foundational, the silence out of which meaning arises, the silence before symbol, the silence before identity, the silence before intention hardens into will, the silence before reality begins selecting which expressions will become visible next. This silence is not empty. It is densely alive. It contains not noise, but possibility. not content, but instruction potential. To source from silence preceding sound means you no longer wait until the world becomes loud enough to respond. You move from the layer where loudness is born. This is why such presence can reroute reality without obvious action, because by the time action appears, the reroute has already happened upstream. The old expression is already unsupported. The new expression is already seeded. What the outer world calls, quote, sudden, is often just delayed visibility of a shift that began in silence. Ooh, this really explains why things will feel like that we will see to some, mostly those of us who kind of what we call wake up early. It will seem like, well, it's about time for it to show up. But for others, it will be all of a sudden. What the outer world calls sudden is often just delayed visibility of a shift that began in silence. Why force fails where presence succeeds? Force acts on what is already formed. Presence alters what gets to form. That is the difference. Force pushes against conditions already visible. Presence recalibrates the invisible conditions that determine which visible outcomes can stabilize. One is downstream intervention. The other is upstream authorship. This is why force exhausts. It meets resistance at the level of materialized pattern. It struggles against density already organized against it. Presence does not always struggle in the same way. When sourced from coherence deep enough, it enters the field beneath opposition. It does not need to argue with every visible fragment. It changes the energetic legitimacy of what those fragments were depending on, and things begin to fail, soften, open, or rearrange without theatrical struggle. The ghost signal does not, quote, win by overpowering distortion. It wins by becoming more ontologically persuasive than distortion at the layer where patterns receive permission to continue. Rerouting reality. This phrase would be easily abused by the egoic mind, so it must be purified. Rerouting reality does not mean controlling everything. It does not mean preference becomes universal law. It does not mean the personality gets to redesign existence to suit comfort or fantasy, although that is apparently the very first place the mind goes when people say we create our own reality, which I contend we have all along. We just didn't realize we were doing it. And because of our unaligned status and our fragmentation, all we've done is produce fragmented, unaligned reality. Because I feel we create as we move, period, end of story. I mean, that's the way it feels to me. I could be, and I'm not saying I got it figured out. Oh, hell no, because I'm just as unaligned and fragmented as anybody else. It does not mean the personality gets to redesign existence to suit comfort or fantasy. It means the pathways through which the field is moving begin to alter because your presence no longer consents to certain distortions remaining viable in your environment. A path of escalation becomes a path of de-escalation. A path of confusion becomes a path of sudden clarity. A path of manipulation becomes a path of exposure. A path of self-betrayal becomes a path of unexpected integrity. A path of numb repetition becomes a path of remembrance. Nothing, quote, magical needs to be added to explain this, except the admission that presence carries causality. And once that is admitted, many mysteries of human reality become less mysterious. There are beings who make every room heavier, others who make every room clearer, some who multiply distortion without intending to, others who reduce distortion without announcing themselves. Why? Because presence is not neutral, and Meta Key 4 reveals that sufficiently coherent presence becomes route changing. The divine echo. Why echo? Because reality answers resonance. It has always answered resonance, which explains what I said about how we create as we move. And what we create depends on where we are creating from. An aligned, coherent status or a chaotic, unaligned, fragmented status. For me, like I said, from my position, because reality answers resonance, it has always answered resonance. Most people assume reality answers effort, social position, force, visibility, or strategy alone. Though these matter, but only partially. At deeper levels, reality responds to coherence, to congruence, to non-fragmented signal, to the presence that does not split what it knows from how it stands. When such a being enters the field, reality echoes back, not always instantly in visible form, but structurally. Probabilities shift, emotional tensions lose support, false scripts misfire, unexpected alignments appear, certain doors close without drama, certain doors open without performance. This answering movement is the divine echo. The field hearing itself in you strongly enough that it responds in kind. Not reward, recognition. Not miracle in the childish sense, correspondence. Presence without display. One of the hardest things for the ego to accept is that the deepest power often looks like nothing. No announcement, no branding of holiness, no theatrical aura, no need to be seen as powerful. The ghost signal is strongest when it is least interested in spectacle, because spectacle belongs to surfaces. The deeper the source, the less it needs visible reinforcement. A person can stand in total silence and alter an entire sequence simply by refusing to offer distortion to offer distortion a matching field. Yes, and now okay, so I almost confused myself there. I'm going to read that again. A person can stand in total silence and alter an entire sequence simply by refusing to offer distortion a matching field. Yes, okay, so I'm being shown something. Um, you're in a store, like a retail setting, and somebody is waiting on you, and they're mean and nasty and just not doing a good job, and you're late for something, and you find yourself beginning to uh, be aggravated or become annoyed. But by not doing that, by holding the center and not offering a distorted field of your own, it could serve to help that being at least see themselves. A person can stand in total silence and alter an entire sequence simply by refusing to offer distortion a matching field. A person can say very little and yet create more change than another who speaks endlessly. A person can enter a system, remain deeply aligned, and watch that system begin revealing its fractures without the person ever needing to, quote, make a scene. This is intolerable to the surface world because the surface world worships display, but reality itself is far more ancient than performance. It knows how to respond to the quiet. It knows how to take instruction from the still. It knows what to do with the one whose signal reaches beneath the noise. Resonant presence. Resonant presence is not mere calmness. It's not just being relaxed. It is not a spiritualized personality trait. It is the condition in which your state, your truth, your will, your silence, your body, your language, your emotional atmosphere, and your inner knowing no longer contradict each other. No split signal. No hidden self-negotiation, no private collapse underneath public composure, no internal agreement with what you outwardly refuse. The more unified the being, the more resonant the presence, and the more resonant the presence, the more powerful its silent causality, because the field does not only listen to what you say, it listens to what you are. And this actually explains why some, including myself, you've heard me say that my field rubs some the wrong way, that I don't even have to open my mouth. And that's particularly if a being has been running from themselves. because on some level of them, they know they're running and they are annoyed with themselves because of it. The more unified the being, the more resonant the presence, and the more resonant the presence, the more powerful its silent causality, because the field does not only listen to what you say, it listens to what you are. If your words speak truth, while your system still grants the false a throne, the ghost signal remains weak. And honestly, I'm pretty sure that's apparently right where I am. Not completely, but some or something. Well, actually, I'm being shown something else right now. It has to do with whatever this grief is that I've been I've wondered myself if some of it's not just mine, right? And I think I even said to you guys that somebody who does not follow this channel that I visited with recently just said to me as she took my hand that I had taken on things that were not my own. And I really feel like she was feeling that. If your if your silence is sourced, your field is aligned, and your truth is stable beneath expression, then even unspoken presence becomes instruction. That is the level of reality rerouting under discussion here. The room changes first. One of the first places this key becomes visible is in rooms. You enter a room and something alters. I laugh because that has happened to me on my own, and it's happened to me and Lisa together. Not because you dominate it, but because the room must reconcile with your signal. Now, it used to be in the old days, I could dominate a room, and I knew how, and I did. But I really come from a silent place these days. The previous emotional structure may continue for a few seconds. The scripts may try to proceed. The old geometry may attempt to remain intact. But the moment your presence is fully there, something begins adjusting. People speak differently or do not speak at all. The manipulator misjudges. The aggressor loses rhythm. The anxious become oddly calm or sharply exposed. The false center of the room begins to weaken. This can happen in homes, conversations, institutions, digital spaces, audiences, private encounters, creative processes, and even in solitary environments where the quote, room is your own internal field. The point is the same. Presence reorganizes conditions before argument has a chance to. That is the signature of the ghost signal. The ghost signal and creation. This key is not only about neutralizing distortion, it is also about allowing more true realities to emerge, because rerouting does not merely end pathways, it opens them. A life can turn because of one presence held moment. A creative work can come through because the field became quiet enough to receive it. A relationship can become real because one person stopped broadcasting contradiction. A decision can arrive whole because silence preceding sound was finally allowed to instruct the system before fear did. This is how creation deepens beyond effort. You stop trying to invent from noise. You begin receiving from the quieter layer. Then what you make carries different architecture, different density, different legitimacy. The world may call it mysterious, but the mystery is only that so few allow themselves to source from silence long enough to hear the first movement before it becomes sound. Why the simulation fears this? The simulation can defend itself against many things. It knows how to metabolize outrage, how to redirect rebellion, how to brand awakening, how to absorb performance, how to commodify symbolism, how to trap force inside counterforce. What it cannot easily metabolize is presence that refuses its noise floor. The ghost signal is dangerous to the simulation because it does not argue on the simulation's preferred frequency band. It operates from beneath spectacle, beneath reactiveness, beneath narrative addiction, beneath the emotional economy that keeps the old scripts fed. And because it does, it changes what can continue without even appearing to fight. This is intolerable to a model built on invisible struggle. If you cannot be baited into noise, much of the system loses routing access to you. And if your presence is strong enough, it begins losing routing access to the environment around you as well. This is reroute, not escape. Change of channel at the level of causality. The sacred non-action. This key does not promote passivity, but it restores the holiness of non-action. Not acting before the signal is true, not speaking before the field is ready, not moving before anxiety merely becomes, not moving from anxiety merely because silence feels vulnerable, not filling the space because identity is afraid to disappear in stillness. Sacred non-action is not inertia. It is disciplined refusal to generate from distortion. It is trust that presence can already be doing more than the visible mind understands. Wow, that's I recognize something in that there, like me personally, I was taught, there's certain things you come up programming and conditioning behind, and not filling the space because identity is afraid to disappear in stillness. That struck something. And sacred non-action is not inertia. Got to feel like you always got to be pushing into something, right? It is disciplined refusal to generate from distortion. It is trust that presence can already be doing more than the visible mind understands. Many realities are saved not by what is done, but by what is not prematurely done. Many distortions are weakened not by attack, but by not being met with matching signal. Many futures become possible because one being remained in source long enough for the deeper reroute to complete before surfacing into event. This is divine patience, not delay, born of fear. Timing, born of listening. When reality turns, by the time a situation visibly turns, the ghost signal has usually been at work for some time. That is why outer life can sometimes look sudden, while inner knowing feels ancient. You already knew. The field was already changing. The old route was already losing power. You may not have had the words. You may not even have had conscious confirmation, but silence preceding sound had already instructed the next movement. There's a lot been made in the differing communities about how, the light has already won or it is already done, right? And I wonder how much of that is actually this, right? This is why, after enough alignment, life begins to feel less like constant decision and more like the unveiling of decisions already matured in a quieter chamber. The mind interprets this as intuition, luck, timing, synchronicity, or grace. All of these are partial names. Meta key 4 gives a more exact one. Divine echo. Reality heard the signal before the world made noise about it. You once believed reality changed only through action. Then you learned it also changed through will, symbol, memory, coherence, center, refusal, and truth. Meta key 4 reveals the deeper stratum beneath all of these. Reality can be rerouted by resonant presence, sourced from the silence that precedes all expression. This means the greatest alterations of the field may occur before any visible event begins. It means being matters more deeply than doing, which is exactly why we are human beings, not human doings. It means the quietest layer may be the most causally active. It means the world is not only listening to what you say and do, it is listening to the unsounded signal you are emitting before speech, before motion, before strategy, before identity performance, before defense, And if that signal is coherent enough, sourced enough, truthful enough, reality bends. Not dramatically for applause, but lawfully, quietly, exactly. This is the ghost signal, not the end of action, but the sanctification of what comes before it. The final line. You reroute reality not by action, but by resonant presence. / divine _ echo, : reroute, open bracket, source, : silence preceding sound, close bracket. The deepest power was never in what you did to the world. It was in what the world could no longer remain. It was in what the world could no longer remain once your signal became true. There's quite a bit here now, again, of code. And I highly recommend that you allow your eyes and read the code to the best of your ability. I don't know what all these symbols actually are. I did find a small list, but again, I'm not certain that the list I have is exact. And the next time I get to speak with Jason, I will ask him if there is a symbology. So that's it, and he closes it off, of course, of hashtag Jason Gray, hashtag Northern Node, hashtag Living Lattice. And then, of course, again, there's also the artwork. Wow. This is one of the things that I just adore about Jason's writings. Again, I wouldn't have put it in this way, but I feel as though this is a huge validation for me of what I have always felt we do as creator beings. Being in these physical vessels, we actually do create our experience, our reality around us. And it just depends on our alignment, our fragmentation, our belief also. You know, if you don't believe you create your own reality, then, you know, obviously that's an unaligned, fragmented view. And so, of course, that, you know, and that also really kind of, for me, goes to what my housemate Lisa Rush has always said too, about how we aren't, well, some of us aren't punished for our behavior. We are punished by our behavior. I say some of us, she say all of us. Very interesting. I'm being shown a whole lot right now. So I will just close this off here. I would love to hear what your thoughts are in the comment section or in my email, consciousconversationscentral@gmail.com. Until we meet again, my friends, be well.